Welcome back to Conversate with Akeem D. Earle. I'm back with another very special guest, Miss Emily Stedman. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. Now we're going to open with the official Conversate opening question, and that is, if I was not an attorney, I would be a what?
That's a good question. I have two answers.
Mm-hmm.
I was a fifth grade teacher in a past life, and I would go back and be a fifth grade teacher. I loved it. I loved my students. I loved the four walls of my classroom. Just a really transformative experience that I still think about a lot today.
Yeah.
If money were not in question, I would love to be a professional tennis player's hitting partner. So like don't have the pressure of the tournaments, but just like hit and help train the professional tennis player.
Why?
And like get to travel to all the tournaments with them.
So why not the actual tennis player? Just the pressure? You don't want to be able to be under the lights and all that?
Correct. I'm a lifelong tennis player.
Man,
it's a very mental game, and as soon as we start keeping score, I crumble. But I can hit with the best of them. So
with the pressure of the competition comes, but it's time to really get that point in that match. It's game time.
Yeah.
Man, that's so funny. That's so funny. So how was your time as a teacher, and why the fifth grade? Why that specific grade?
Sure. So I did Teach for America. I applied at the same time in college as I was taking the LSAT. And I had always been drawn to the mission of Teach for America. I grew up in public schools. My mom was a public school teacher before she became an attorney. And I thought, I'll go and I'll teach. And if I hate it, I'll go to law school. Or if I don't get into Teach for America, I'll go to law school. Fifth grade was one of my favorite years of school. So when I interviewed at the school I was assigned to, it kind of worked out. And I lived in downtown Phoenix, but I taught about 40 miles west of downtown in a very rural suburb of Phoenix. So quite a different experience than like my other Teach for America colleagues who were in downtown.
For sure. Well, I didn't know there was like a teacher to lawyer pipeline. Like your mom did the same thing. So
yeah, she taught much longer than I did, but
Man, that's dope. So did you get that inspiration from your mom to become a teacher and then eventually become a lawyer?
Yeah, and I think when I was a kid, I played school, right? Like, so I was always drawn to teaching. You know, the mission of Teach for America is to create public schools that educate every child, you know, and I believe in that very deeply. And so it was also a way to give back. I mean, I was 22 through 24. They put me in charge of 30 10-year-olds, and that's just a wild ride. And like, is it hard to be an attorney? Yes. Nothing in my life has been as hard as those 2 years.
Really? Those 10-year-olds gave you a run for your money.
They sure did. They really, really did.
What about it makes it so difficult?
So, I mean, I think at 22, you know, it's your first job. So that's just always kind of a learning curve.
Yeah.
I had never lived outside the South. So there was a lot of cultural shock. I, at 22, had to have conversations with parents about their children that they didn't always agree with me about. And some of them were old enough to be my parent, right? So it was just a lot in time management. I mean, I was commuting an hour each way, which was an adventure in 2008 to 2010. So the height of the recession, not getting paid anything, really, and managing that. And then you're in charge of these little humans who basically look to you to fulfill all their needs for 8 hours a day. So it's a lot.
No, that's real. My dad is a teacher and was a principal, and I definitely saw, and he was actually my teacher and principal. My sister was also a teacher, so a lot of teachers in the family. So I definitely saw firsthand the difficulty of framing the minds of the next generation and stuff. And then even speaking about the pay, that is not. They don't compensate teachers the way they should be.
No,
So,
not at all.
man, that's dope. That's dope. So talk about your transition into being an attorney now. Like, what was that process like?
Sure. So I loved teaching, but I hated Arizona.
Oh, dang.
I did not. Sorry to any of your listeners who live there. Desert life is not for me.
I mean, that's tough for me to hear.
Well, and
Like I
that's where
told you,
you live.
I literally
Yeah.
just moved here, so that's not encouraging. But go on, it's
Yes.
fine. It's fine. I
Well,
can take it.
I've only been to Tucson once, and it has a very different feel from Phoenix.
Okay.
And again, I was teaching in the middle of cotton fields, like in farmland and dairy farms. So it was very different.
Very different. Yeah,
It was also 2008 to 2010. So the recession was still going on. And I had actually initially committed to teach a third year. And then I just started to get really homesick. And I was like, well, I've always wanted to go to law school.
Yeah.
I'll try it. And if I hate it, I'll go home to Atlanta and teach there.
Wow.
And I went to Ole Miss for a lot of reasons. One being my undergrad experience at Wake Forest was very intense. And I chose Ole Miss because I luckily rightfully predicted it would not be as intense as Wake Forest. And it was closer to home. And I loved law school almost from the jump. I like being a student. So the learning and, as a teacher, I couldn't go to the bathroom whenever I wanted. I couldn't go to the doctor, couldn't go to the grocery store in the middle of the day. So there was a lot of freedom that came with being a student again. And so I rode through law school, did all the traditional stuff, law journal, and I ended up clerking for a bankruptcy judge in Jackson, Mississippi after my 2L year. I always knew I wanted to clerk. My mom had clerked after law school. I saw the value of having that relationship with her judge.
Yeah.
And at the end of law school, I was hired by a judge in North Carolina very early in my 3L year. And a month before I graduated, he said, "Sorry, Emily, I'm not going to be a judge anymore."
Wow.
And I had about a month, literally like almost a month to the date that I was graduating. And the judge I had worked for in Jackson connected me with a judge in Milwaukee. I interviewed with her by video the day before I graduated law school. My parents were in town while I was interviewing, and I came out of the interview and said, I've never been to Wisconsin. I didn't want to like this woman, but if she offers me the job, I'm going to take it.
Wow.
And so I moved to Milwaukee to clerk and did that for 3 years before joining private practice.
Wow. So you didn't have a problem with like leaving states and moving to a whole new area, from Ole Miss to Jackson to Milwaukee, back to Atlanta. You had no issue just picking up and moving.
I don't really know where that comes from. I mean, my dad grew up in upstate New York and lived in Philly, but he's then been in Atlanta for basically 40 years now. My mom and sister have only ever lived in the Atlanta area. But they encouraged me to pursue options out of state for college. And once I did that, I just followed the opportunities. So I've made 3 cross-country moves for these opportunities, which I know you can relate to, and it's a lot.
Sure. Yeah.
And now I've been in Milwaukee for 11 years. I never expected to be here this long. And my husband's born and raised here. So this is going to be my home for the foreseeable future.
Wow. That's dope. I think that's amazing though, because I left New York, never been outside the state other than like vacations and little small stints. Then went to school in Pennsylvania, then went to school in DC, and then got a job in DC, and now I'm in Arizona. Even though that's up and down the East Coast a little bit, it was scary at first leaving where you were, but you don't regret it because it's the opportunity that takes you there. and that opportunity leads to the next thing and then to the next thing. And that's how life goes. And I think that's fun though. Like exploring
Yeah,
a new space. Yeah.
it has definitely been scary, at
Hmm.
times stressful,
Yeah.
um, but I've never regretted it. And
Yeah.
I kind of joke that, like, Wake Forest for college, not my first choice. Arizona for
Hmm.
Teach for America, not my first choice. Ole Miss for
Yes.
law school, not my first choice.
Yeah.
Wisconsin was not on the radar. But you go and you make the most of the opportunities, and
Yeah.
luckily it's all worked out.
Absolutely. When people ask me about Arizona, they make it sound like I chose Arizona. Like when I was a kid as a little boy, I was writing down, I want to go to Arizona. No, like this was never part of the plan. I didn't
Right.
choose Arizona. It's where the profession took me, is where the opportunities took you. And then sometimes you just gotta jump. You just gotta
Absolutely.
take the opportunity and see where it goes. That's dope. I love that. I love that.
100%.
So you spoke about moving into private practice after your clerkships, and I do want to ask about that. Earlier this year, you became partner at Husch and Blackwell
Husch
LLP,
Blackwell, yep.
Husch Blackwell LLP, and you became a partner in their technology, transportation, and manufacturing industry. Congratulations, first of all, that's big.
Thank you.
So tell the audience, what is the technology, transportation, and manufacturing industry? What does that work look like? That's so broad.
Yeah, so my firm is organized a little differently. So we
Mm-hmm.
have practice groups. I'm a commercial litigator. We have a practice group leader. I meet with those people regularly. But first and foremost, we are organized into industry teams. And that is so that clients in specific industries can be more easily connected with all types of attorneys who work for clients in their industry. And mine is, we call it TMT, Technology, Manufacturing, and Transportation. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, if you think about a widget, first you develop it, that's in tech. Then you
Mm-hmm.
make it, that's manufacturing. And then you transport it to market. So technology,
Mm-hmm.
manufacturing, and transportation.
Okay.
Um, yeah. And, I'm not limited to that industry team. I
Yeah.
do work as a commercial litigator. I can really assist anyone's clients. But by being in that industry team and organized that way, I can cross sell with corporate attorneys who have TMT clients, labor and employment attorneys, data privacy, transportation attorneys, you name it.
Awesome. So can you give an example? Like Emily walks into work on a Tuesday. What's an issue that she would have to handle? What's a typical day would look like in this industry or in your line of work?
Sure. And most of this actually falls within being a commercial litigator for me.
Yeah.
But I'm usually helping clients either get out of contracts with or
Mm-hmm.
without litigation. So they're either having issues in a relationship or they're looking to wind it down. And maybe there's a dispute and they need a litigator to come solve the problem, and represent them in arbitration, litigation, etc. Or I can help corporate clients maybe reach out and reach a negotiated exit before
Mm-hmm.
litigation. And it covers the gamut from small claims where our clients have been sued by maybe their customers, pro se,
Mm-hmm.
unrepresented claimants, all the way up to multi-million-dollar clients who are being sued by their vendors, by their service providers, and things like that. So small and large businesses.
Got you. So say your client is like the company who makes this microphone, and they're in contract with the company who puts it together. They have the IP for the microphone, but they're in contract with the company that puts it together. That relationship is not going well. There's like, I don't want to work with this company. I want to find somebody else to put my microphone together, and you would
Right.
facilitate how to get that done. Got you. Got you.
Yes. Mhm.
Is that an area that you always saw yourself in, or is that somewhere you just fell or just found yourself?
Yeah. So I always wanted to litigate. And I was sort of the cliche. I thought I'd be a prosecutor or a public defender
Wow.
coming out of law school. When you do well in law school, you're guided towards clerkships
Yeah.
and big law. And so clerking for me, sort of like teaching, was a time to like really think, okay, do I want to go public interest or do I want to go private practice?
Yeah.
Um, and I applied to big firms, got in, and just dove headfirst into litigation. I've dabbled in some areas of litigation like bankruptcy, and ultimately just really enjoyed breach of contract disputes, which is hilarious because contracts first semester is my worst grade in law school by a
like
lot.
like most law students. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
and
yeah.
today it's all I do. Yeah.
Man, that's crazy.
Um, mhm.
You
And
didn't
but
you didn't let that you didn't let that discourage you.
I did not. And I'm fortunate that a clerkship also kind of can make up for some
For sure.
a bad grade here and there.
For sure. For sure. For sure. That's interesting. I had similar thoughts. I ended up in public interest, becoming a prosecutor. And big law was definitely a thought in my mind, but I always felt like I'm not going to have the opportunities to be in the courtroom as in big law as I would in public interest. How often are you in the courtroom? How often are you building discovery and building questions and being in front of a judge? How often do you actually have trial experience in general?
Not a lot. And, that's a really great point because I interned for a bankruptcy judge in law school. And what I liked about it was young attorneys from the biggest firms were getting into court. And I thought, that's what I want. I ended up not loving the bankruptcy work and I ended up being fulfilled by stuff outside of court. So it has been truly shocking to me how much I enjoy negotiating settlements, negotiating exits from contracts. And I do have 3 jury trials under my belt, which for you as
Nice.
a prosecutor is probably none. But for me,
No,
that's
that's
a
great.
big
No.
deal. 1 in federal court, 2 in state court.
Yeah.
And I have, probably 15 or 20 depositions under my belt. And I love depositions. I would take them all
Really?
day, every day if I could. Yeah.
That's interesting because my first deposition, I was a paralegal and I fell asleep. I was like, this is way too long. This is way too long. Like, can we wrap it up? He gonna answer the same question 5 different ways, or he's not gonna answer. Man, why do you love depositions? This is long to me.
I love it because it's like, I mean, probably because I'm a nerd and I like learning. And so if you're defending a deposition, you have to be on, you have to be paying attention to the
Yes.
questions, objecting.
Mm-hmm.
You learn over time to take fewer and fewer notes during depositions, whether you're taking or defending them, because you're just listening. But you can learn so much about your case in a deposition and your client in preparing them for a deposition.
Yeah.
Taking a deposition is just, I just think it's so fun. I mean, you have your outline of questions, you have your documents, and then you just talk to the person. And, I'm not an overly bombastic deposition taker. I try to make it very conversational. I'll
Yeah.
let, pauses linger and the witness will often fill it right up. And you just learn and you have to think on your feet, and really react. So I think some of what people love about trial, you can get in a deposition and it's a little less formal.
Yes.
But I still remember the jury walking in, or the jury candidates walking
Yeah.
in on my first day of trial and getting chills, like legitimately almost brought me to tears because I was like, this is it. This is what I
Man,
meant to do.
this is the
Loved
big
it.
moment.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. You were ready for the pressure in that moment, but you said as a tennis player you can't handle the pressure. What's the difference? I mean, and I do compare a lot going to trial in terms of to sports, like that moment right before the
absolutely.
big game, getting your mind and your body right. Like I'm about to enter war. I'm about to enter it and
Yeah.
try to kill it. So why the difference between tennis? If you could do a jury trial, you can definitely play tennis at the U.S. Open. Come on, Emily.
You would think. But I think for me, I had a lot of natural talent in tennis growing up,
Mm-hmm.
but school was my focus. So
Right.
tennis for
Okay.
me was more of an outlet. It was
Got you.
fun. And so as much as I enjoy drills and the intensity of really competitive hitting with a coach
Mm,
or a hitting partner, I could turn it on at school, for tests. I can turn it on
mm,
in trial, but it just, it's like
didn't
one more
translate.
thing that I just can't turn the pressure on
No, that's
for.
real. That's real. But 3 jury trials is a lot. So I'm still young in the game. I'm still like only like a year and a half in to this thing. So, and I've only had 1 jury trial. So you have way more under your belt as
Well,
in
and
big
they're
law.
happening less and less. So some of it
Yeah.
isn't just that you see fewer trials in
Hmm.
big law, it's you see fewer trials, period, because they
Hmm.
settle.
Yeah.
People don't want to take the risk. Arbitrations are much more common these days.
Yeah.
So they're just happening. I actually have a case in New York right now
Hmm.
where the judge has in her instructions that she doesn't normally do oral argument, but if you put a note in your motion that oral argument will be an opportunity for a young attorney or a diverse attorney, that will weigh in favor of her holding oral arguments. And I
Wow.
think that's interesting to me because that's a
Yeah.
way to get that experience that a lot of us are missing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I always advocate for the changes in the bar exam. And I know this is part of my big hot take, but I feel like there should be an oral aspect to the bar exam. I feel like as an attorney, you need to know how to speak in front of a judge. And if not in front of a judge, like you said, in a deposition in a smaller stakes area, but the ability to speak and bring to life your facts and to tell a story with your facts in advocating for your client, that is helpful across the board, whatever industry you're in. So the fact that she's given that opportunity is, I'm sure, is very helpful.
Yeah. And even for transactional attorneys, I was speaking with one of our corporate M&A associates yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and she worked for almost a decade before going to law school. And
Mm-hmm.
what that gave her, even though it wasn't necessarily related to what she does now, is the ability to talk to clients, right? She'd
Yes.
had a boss, she'd had clients, she knew how to have those conversations. And that is oral advocacy, even if
Yes.
you're a transactional attorney.
Yes. Absolutely. I did a clinic, general practice clinic, and I had a client who her first language was Spanish. And being able to get the facts from her, being able to slow down, be patient, understand what she needs from me as an attorney, and building that relationships even across language barriers, that's a skill that develops over time that you need to do. Because if the client relationship starts off rocky, if you don't know how to talk to them or there's some tension, the whole transaction, the whole relationship can sour. It could all look bad. So that's definitely something you
Absolutely.
build over time. That's dope. That's dope.
Mhm.
So I want to get to how I even reached out to you is because I follow you on Twitter. You are part of Law Twitter, and I saw your tweets. And as I said when I reached out, I thought your tweets were funny. They were relatable. They were helpful in terms of being a litigator, a commercial litigator at that. And I thought it was, and again, like we spoke about, I thought it was interesting how much litigation you were doing, even in big law, because I don't hear that a lot. I'm only hearing like, oh, you're only doing paper pushing, really.
Mhm.
And you make big law sound fun. You make big law actually sounds pretty good. But the narrative around big law is that it's cutthroat, long hours, you don't get treated right, a whole lot of work. What is your narrative around big law?
Yeah. So this is a great question. And I think as a legal profession, we let, the top 15 biggest, richest, most profitable firms dictate what we think big law is.
Hmm.
But there are thousands of
Mm-hmm.
attorneys practicing in big law, not in New York City, not, at the big firms, but we're
Mm-hmm.
still very much big law attorneys.
Yeah.
Or even I call them regional firms that have the same culture and expectations of big law, but because they're only in Milwaukee or they're headquartered in Birmingham, they're just a little smaller, but culturally
Mm-hmm.
it's the same. And, the entire legal profession has super high expectations. And that's sort of table stakes no matter what your role is in the
Yeah.
legal landscape. For me, big law, I've prided myself. So I've been in big law for almost or just over 8 years. And for
Mm-hmm.
all but one of those years, I was extremely content, even happy. Like I joked, I was the happy associate.
Wow.
Some of that is perspective, right? I'd been a fifth grade teacher, I had been a federal law clerk,
Mm-hmm.
no resources, very low pay. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, why are you all complaining that, your laptop doesn't have the most up to date Microsoft? I was using WordPerfect 6 weeks ago, right? Like,
Right.
and you're treated like an adult. Like,
Yeah.
yes, there are micromanagers in big law, and yes,
Mm-hmm.
there are high expectations, but 95% of the time it's get the work done and
Mm-hmm.
everything else is up to you. Now, part of why big law gets such a bad rap is the billable hour.
Mm-hmm.
And we could probably do 5 podcast episodes about the billable hour.
I'm
It's not
sure.
intuitive, it's not natural, it can lead
Mm,
to competitiveness.
man.
And I discovered a way to manage it that kind of just took that all out of it, where I treat it like clocking in and clocking out. It's just an obligation of my job. I know what my
Mm-hmm.
goal is. I break it down into monthly, weekly, and daily targets, and I adjust every step of the way. And that way it doesn't control me like other
Mm-hmm.
people let it control them.
Can you explain what billable hours are,
Mhm.
like you're teaching a fifth grader?
Sure. Yeah. So clients sell services, right? We sell services, and most of us sell services by the hour. And so I have an hourly rate and I track my time in tenth of an hour increments. So 6 minute increments, point one,
Mm-hmm.
point two, point three, 6, 12, 18, 24. The
Mm-hmm.
timeline that I
Yeah.
taught my fifth graders. And then our clients get an invoice that says, I spent half an hour researching this issue related to drafting the complaint, or I spent 5 hours reviewing documents and determining if they're relevant for discovery responses.
Mm-hmm.
And most big firms require their associates to bill a certain number of hours every year. It's called the billable hour requirement.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be, at smaller firms, it might be as low as 14 or 1600. It can be as high as 22, 2300. Some
Right.
firms say 1900 on paper, but to get a bonus, you need to hit 2000 and everything in between. And it has some perverse incentives, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you're paid by the hour, you might be encouraged to spend more time than it actually takes.
Mm-hmm.
Or you have to take on too much work to ensure
Yeah.
that you hit that requirement.
Yeah.
A lot of that is changing. Alternative fee arrangements are becoming more popular and more common. But
Mm-hmm.
even if I'm on a contingency fee, even if I'm on a transaction and we get paid at close,
Yeah.
I still have, as an associate and partner, I still have to track my time. So I'm tracking everything I do all day, every day, like including this podcast interview.
Man. So, and you do it after, right? Or do you estimate, like, okay, I'm about to call this client, it's probably going to be a half hour, let me write that down so I don't forget? Or do we just wait till the end to measure how much you did?
So I am a bit neurotic about this. And the best way, like all the experts will tell you, you should start and stop as you go. So some people do it digitally and they literally turn a timer on their computer. I just do it by hand. So for every task, I'm writing down the start time, and when I'm done, I write down the stop time and move on.
Got you.
It's
Got you.
crazy when I describe
Yeah.
it like this. It does sound crazy.
No, but it's the industry is what you have to do, and you have to find the best way to do it, and at the same time keep your mental health intact in all this, and which is something you advocate for a lot, the mental well-being of an attorney. Can you speak about that? Because I really did enjoy your perspective on that, protecting the mental health of attorneys, especially in big law. Can you speak about your mission in that?
Sure. So I've always been an anxious person. I've always had sort of what's called low mood. So not full on depression, but periods of kind of a darkness, I would say. And I was always able to manage that, right? And a lot of my anxieties pushed me to do things like teach for America, take the LSAT, get into law school, succeed in law school. But the same time I entered big law, I met my now husband. There was just a lot going on. Clients were all of a sudden paying a lot of money for my work. I had 9 different bosses. I had to hit this billable hour requirement. And my mental health and anxieties became something that I could no longer manage on my own. And for at least 2 years, maybe a little longer, although I was getting help, I started seeing a therapist. I was convinced I was the only one having a hard time. So another hard thing about big law is a lot of big law attorneys have this air about them that because of these high expectations and because they've made it, they've never made a mistake. They don't struggle. They've never had a hard time. Or they develop pretty negative coping strategies like drinking a lot, which is extremely common, especially in Wisconsin. And I fell into that. I started drinking more than I'd ever drank in my life. And I burned out. Ultimately, I burned out during the pandemic when I was alone all day, every day, because my husband couldn't work remotely. It all just kind of hit me. I had started having some very negative, scary thoughts, on my drive to work. And I just thought this isn't sustainable. And I had started to talk a little openly about it, but kind of as all this was happening to me and I was changing firms, I started participating in more lawyer well-being opportunities and posting about it on LinkedIn. And it kind of just took on a life of its own where now, almost daily on LinkedIn, I create content about thriving in big law and maintaining or being more preventative about losing your mental health. Because a lot of bar associations have lawyer assistance programs, but they're reactive, right? You go to them after you've hit rock bottom, after you have a malpractice claim. And we've got to be much more proactive up front.
So what were some of the tools that you use to make those changes? What are some of the things that you had to implement in your life so you no longer felt like that?
Sure. I started going to therapy. I started mindfulness meditation so that I could better address the moments of panic and anxiety as they were happening. I gave up alcohol for 6.5 months to kind of transform that relationship. I started very daily tracking my billable hour requirement so that I controlled it rather than it controlling me. And tried to find partners that I like working for that fit better with my needs. And I talk openly about it. And people have opinions about that, right? Like I even know my parents are a bit uncomfortable with me talking about it because we're in a traditional profession that doesn't talk about these things. And the older generations don't talk about these things. And as a millennial, we've been told we don't want to work hard, we're
Mm-hmm.
entitled. And to
Yep.
that, I say, no, I want to be as successful as you. I just don't want to lose myself in the process.
Exactly. And like you said, in our traditional profession, you can't show signs of weakness. And I'm sure in big law, and even me as a prosecutor, or just being a child attorney in general, there is no room for like, I'm overwhelmed and I really need to take a break, or you need to have a strong front, or else you feel like you could be pushed over, or people will push you over because they see a weakness. They're looking for those small pockets of weakness so that they can take advantage to win whatever
Yep.
case they would want for their client.
Yep.
So I do think it's very important that you speak about these things, because like you said, people go through it whether we speak about it or not. Like it's still a reality. And like you said, you're going through things where you're going home and you're having these terrible thoughts, but you still got to go back to work and do it anyway, because these hours need to be billed, the client needs to be serviced, and all these different things. So I
I
think it's
gotta pay my
very,
student loans.
yo,
Yeah.
groceries are expensive. The eggs is through the roof,
Yeah.
gas, like things, and that's the hard part. Is like, it feels like, and not to have a pity party, but it feels like you can't stop because life is gonna go on anyway. But like you said, if you could
And
put, yeah,
I
yeah,
definitely felt that. And it's been very interesting after it happened to me
mm-hmm.
to watch some younger attorneys do it differently and ask for
Mm,
help and ask
yep,
for time away and
yep,
ask to go on reduced hours requirements because they don't want to get where I got. And I
mm,
commend them for that. And I commend the firms who it finally clicks for
yeah,
and they make these accommodations, because there's this myth that if we give in to these weaknesses, we'll make less money. And it's
mm,
actually the opposite. If your attorneys are unwell, you're going to lose more either
yep,
to ethics and malpractice complaints. They're
yep,
going to quit, and you lose money in the retention turnover.
mm-hmm,
But if we're well, we're more
mm-hmm,
productive. We make more money. We have better client relationships.
yeah,
And this is the way of the future. Like, if people
mm-hmm,
think millennials talk about this a lot, they haven't talked to a Gen Z
nope,
attorney
no,
who's going to come in and
nope,
say no left and right.
yes. Yes, and rightfully so. And you hit the nail on the head. Like, we want the same things the previous generation had, but we just don't want to get there in a broken body, in a broken mental
Right.
state, just to get there for the sake of getting there. No, there's ways to do this in a very, very healthy manner. That's so important. And you're right, Gen Z, they don't care. They're gonna quit. They're gonna leave if you don't give them the environment that they want. They're gonna leave. I commend them for it. It's real.
I
It's
do
real.
too.
Yeah.
I remember I had this, I was on this litigation team, and an
Mm-hmm.
associate announced a vacation, and some senior attorneys were kind of begrudging him for that. And
Mm-hmm.
I just said, look, are you really upset that he didn't give you enough notice, or are you jealous that you didn't feel like you could take that vacation at his
Exactly.
age? And they laugh because that's just it. It's a
Yeah.
hazing mentality.
Mm.
It was hard for me, so it should be hard for you. And we got to break that cycle because it's just not productive. It's
Yeah.
harmful for all of us, but it's particularly harmful for diverse and minority attorneys, caregiving attorneys, parents, you
Mm.
name it. And which is a whole nother issue in big law and really the legal profession
Right.
generally. But
So where do you, this is an interesting topic. So where do you feel like the line is between, okay, doing what you need to do to have the mental health and the mental well-being to get the work done as a young attorney, but also not sugarcoating and babying and hand-holding so that you can actually get the experience that you need? Where is that line?
yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that I really know. I
Yeah.
experiment with this constantly with the people
Mm-hmm.
I delegate to. I think it's about open communication, because
Mm-hmm.
you can be an associate who wants to be on reduced hours or just doesn't want to be a partner but wants to be a big law attorney. and still do great work, provide
Mm-hmm.
valuable client relationships, and be valuable.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, I think it's about communicating. You signed up for this. And
Yeah.
so, yes, there's room to do things differently, but to a degree, you still have to earn your stripes, right?
Yeah.
I hit my hours every year. I um, took knocks and learned from them and grew and improved and put in my time. And the more you build that trust, the more you build the reputation
Mm.
that you are reliable, the more flexibility you'll get, the more credit you'll have to take vacations, to
Yeah.
work remotely from somewhere else, and all of the above.
For sure. I had a supervisor who barely saw him, pops in every once in a while, and certain people were complaining about it. I was like, I want to work to get to that point. Like, I can't blame him because his peers was like, he's been working here for years. When he was a line attorney, he was putting in work, he was killing it, and now he's a supervisor and he gets to do that. So I'm like, I'm not knocking him. Like, I want to work to get to
Right.
that point where I can choose my own hours, I can create my own schedule, and I know the
Yep.
work that I put in. I know that I built the foundation to be at this space. So it's just time in. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So on a lighter note, we're gonna go to a segment I call This or That. And that's exactly what it is. I'll give you two options and you choose. You have like 2 seconds to choose. You don't gotta think about it. And you can give an explanation. If you really feel compelled to give an explanation, you can. All right, we'll start off a little light. Coke or Pepsi?
Oh gosh. See, I have to explain this because I grew up in Atlanta, so
Okay.
everything is Coke. I prefer
Um,
Coke Zero, but I do not like Diet Coke. I prefer Diet
really?
Pepsi. But otherwise, Coke all day. I'm from Atlanta. Like, I can't,
You can't choose anything.
no, but
Coke
I
Zero
hate
is really
Diet
good
Coke.
too. Coke Zero
It is the
is
best.
yeah.
Yeah. hmm
Boneless wings or bone-in wings?
Boneless.
Really? The chicken nuggets? Really?
I don't like wings. I don't like eating with my hands and getting them dirty.
Emily, oh, we was having
I
such a
know.
great conversation. And you say you
My
don't
I
like
like
wings?
dry rub. I'll eat dry rub
Okay.
wings.
You like to keep it
Um,
clean. The saucy wings
yeah.
is too much work.
hmm
Oh
I
man.
don't like it.
Lexus or Westlaw?
Westlaw.
Ooh, you're a Westlaw girl. Okay. Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers?
Neither. Jordan Love, all the way.
Oh my God. What? So I did my research. You're a Packers fan, right?
I am, but
You choose Jordan Love.
Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers have become hot mess expresses when they leave the Packers.
That is true. That is true. I didn't take into account the off the field stuff. They both
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yes, they are both
Okay,
ridiculous.
let's do it as a player on the field, as a quarterback. Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, or Jordan Love. I'll give all three.
So I would probably be Aaron Rodgers. I was not a pro football fan until I moved to Wisconsin. I'm a
Okay,
college football girl,
got you.
left and right.
Mm-hmm.
Grew up on Georgia football, like serious Georgia
Ooh,
football.
that's a good time to be a
Um,
Georgia football fan.
it is. And Ole Miss
Yeah,
this year is doing pretty
yeah.
well so far. So we'll see. So Aaron was the quarterback when I moved
Mm-hmm.
here. He did not win a Super Bowl while I've been here, but
Mm-hmm.
I have full faith and credit to Jordan Love,
Yeah.
and he will not be injured this weekend, and he will be able to play.
Oh man, you don't think that the month off you think is gonna be shorter than that? You don't think he's gonna be injured for that long?
He's not ruled out for week 2 as we sit here today.
We'll see. Okay, good stuff. Yeah, Jordan Love is good. He's a great
Yeah.
quarterback. He's gonna be really good.
And normal so far.
Right. We ain't hear nothing. Just don't speak. Just don't tweet nothing. No podcast. Just stick to the football.
Yeah.
Direct or cross examination?
Cross.
It's more fun. Yeah, people usually pick cross. It's rare that you get direct. East Coast or Midwest?
Well, some people don't consider Georgia the East Coast.
Consider the South. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
So I'd probably pick Midwest. I love it here. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's the heartland of America. Yeah. When all the songs that talk about how great America is, they're talking about the
Up the
Midwest.
Midwest. That's true. Also peaceful and calm. And I'm sure does that help in terms of being in big law in the Midwest? Just the environment is way slower, way calmer. Does that help? Just the environment that seep into your work environment as well?
Yes, I mean, Midwest nice is real and it doesn't apply to
Mm.
Chicago always, but yeah, I mean, I've for whatever reason have had like 8 or 9 cases in New York and
Mm.
it's been a wild ride. It's so culturally different.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've been to Arizona a couple times, but since I moved here, I'm like, people are just nice. Oh my gosh. Like they just want to talk
Well,
to
but
you.
it's because they're all from the Midwest originally.
They moved from the West to the Midwest. Oh, that's true.
Uh,
Okay. uh Twitter or LinkedIn?
oh, that depends. So LinkedIn
Mm-hmm.
is my home. It's where I started creating content.
Mm-hmm.
I like the guardrails on it. I keep it professional. But law Twitter is such a positive place. And if you can stay
Mm,
in law Twitter and not get into the fringes
yeah.
of Twitter where it gets really dark,
Yeah.
law Twitter has been incredible. And I've only really
Mm,
been all in on it for a year and a half.
yeah.
And it's just been so fun.
Yeah. So I do want to get into that in your content creation. Speaking of like time management and stuff like that, how do you find the time? Because I see you post. You're on it. Like you post regularly on LinkedIn and on Twitter, and you have a full-time job. You just recently got married. All these different things going on in your life. How do you find the time to be consistent in your content?
So it's funny you use the word consistent. So at my firm, we do the Clifton Strengths test, and consistency is my number 2 strength, and discipline is my
Mm,
number 1
good for
strengths.
you,
So,
man. Bottom
so
for me.
well, it's a little crazy sometimes, right? It's type A to like an extreme level. That I
Mm-hmm.
would not argue is always healthy.
Right.
Um, but it's just part of my job, really. Like
Yeah.
I view it as part of my business development, part of my mentoring and networking. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just make the time. It's about an hour every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I just build it in.
Yeah. So do you have like you have a system that you set up in terms of okay, what I'm gonna post, what I'm gonna post about?
Yeah, less so now. I used to map it out, really like list out a
Mm-hmm.
topic a day. Now I have so much content that if I get, writer's block, I'll just look back at old posts, pick one that did
Mm-hmm.
well and repost it. Um, but I tend to just post first thing in the morning. My best
Yeah.
posts are ones that I write off the cuff, don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Um, Use your authentic voice and then genuinely engage with the people who engage with your content. And then it's like I talk about taking micro breaks a lot. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you see me posting during the middle of the day, it's like I'm between tasks and I'm taking a break, or I'm walking to the bathroom, or I'm
Mm,
walking to lunch.
yeah.
So I know some people are like, you can't write a brief and be on social media all the time. That's correct. You can't. But I work it in the small moments when I'm taking a break because you can't
Right.
focus all day either.
That's true. You need some time to. That's good. And so, do you have a goal with your content? Are you trying to get to a certain place? I know when you get into the content world, you sometimes move away from the original intent of it. You just want to share what you have. You just want to share your gift, share your creativity. But then you get into checking for the likes, checking for the engagement, and checking for the algorithm. And where are you in that process?
So the engagements, the likes, the followers keep me motivated, and it
Nice.
it helps me stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
And the most powerful parts are when people DM me and say, I've
Yeah.
implemented this and it's helped me.
Yeah.
Or, thank you. I didn't know it was okay to talk about these things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I love litigating. I love being in big law. The machine of big law makes my practice easier. But maybe I won't always like litigation. And I'm starting to
Mm,
get paid speaking opportunities.
yeah.
There's this whole world of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I will do that long term. But for now, I like writing. I like writing for fun. It's a way to creatively write. And I
Yeah.
think it improves my legal writing too. And it's literally a hobby that I enjoy and brings me a lot of joy.
Yeah. And I also saw that you have a podcast as well
Mhm.
called The Grace Period.
I
Talk about
do.
that.
Yeah, so I really wanted to do TikTok. I really
Hmm.
wanted to do this thing where I was capturing sort of what it's like when an associate comes into my office and asks me for advice and I record giving advice.
Hmm.
Just editing videos, that's like one step too far for content creation at the moment for me. Like I can't
Man, it's a whole process.
edit.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So I Googled how do you start a podcast. It's
Hmm.
shockingly easy.
Yeah.
And I sat on it for like 6 to 8 months. And
Hmm.
I've been working with a business development coach, and I told her about it. And she was like, absolutely, you have to do this. And that's all I needed.
Hmm.
So, kind of like everything I do, I planned out the first season. I put reminders on my calendar,
Hmm.
record today, release tomorrow. They're 10 episode seasons. Every episode is about 15 minutes or less.
Hmm.
And it's really all the lessons I've learned along the way and hopefully helping people avoid some of the mistakes I've made, or
Yeah.
move through the lessons faster.
Yeah. And I listened to a couple of your episodes, and I found some of the things that you said very interesting. You were speaking about your experience at Big Log earlier on, and you said you spoke about you were encouraging your listeners, and you said people will try to knock you down a peg or two, and it worked. And when it worked, like you said, when it worked, it worked. Talk about that. Like, what do you mean people try to knock you down a peg or two in Big Law, and it's working, and it worked? Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a hierarchy in Big Law,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of people who move up in the profession who don't know how to manage other people.
Mm-hmm.
And almost at the core of what we do is manage others. We manage
Yeah.
our clients, we manage up, we manage our assistants, we manage paralegals, and there's a lot of micromanaging that goes on in the law. And I think also when you're ambitious and you're willing to do things a little differently,
Mm-hmm.
that can rub people the wrong way because they either never thought it could be done differently, or like I said earlier, they're a little jealous might not be the right word, but they're like, you could, what? You can do
Yeah.
it differently. And they get
Yeah.
almost defensive.
Man.
And with this hazing mentality, it can feel like your spirit's being crushed a little bit, or
Mm-hmm.
you're being told to wait your turn, or um, you can't be yourself. You need to do it exactly like I do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I believed all of that for a good chunk of time. And ultimately, that's what led me to lose myself, and my
Wow.
priorities and who my personality was misaligned with
Man.
what I was requiring of myself and what others were requiring of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost my confidence deeply. I questioned leaving the law
Yeah.
altogether. So it can happen to anybody, and I'm grateful that I had family and friends and a therapist to help me through it and give law another chance or
Yeah.
stick with it.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful that I did.
Yeah. Because not a lot of people have that self-awareness to make that 180, to recognize that, okay, I'm not liking the way I am right now. I need to change it. A lot of people just stay stuck in that environment, in that mindset, and continue
It's
to
often
affect other people.
easier. Hmm.
Mm.
It's often easier to stay the same,
Hmm.
you know, through law school and through achieving, and particularly in big law, there are these gold stars you're going after. And a lot of us don't ever stop and say, is this what I want?
Hmm.
Or is this what my parents want? Is this what my partner or the partner wants for me? Is this what
Yeah.
my spouse wants for me? And I ultimately was able to say, is this what I want? The answer was no. And it kind of caused a reckoning for me.
Man, that's amazing. That's amazing. You also said, you're also giving advice. You also said to nominate yourself for awards. I like that. Explain more. Say more about that.
So I just nominated myself for an award recently.
Nice.
It's the first time I've ever done it, and I got it. Um,
Wow.
and I was shocked.
Like
And
this worked.
I think, yeah, I think there are some people, like my mom included, who was like, you should not tell people you nominated yourself. And I just said, I read the description. I
Mm-hmm.
thought I was qualified.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, if I wait for someone to find me to be recognized for this, it may never come. So why not give it a shot?
Yeah,
It is completely out of my comfort zone to do that.
man.
But I'd do it again. Like, so,
It worked the first time.
right.
Might as well go for it again. No, that's real.
Mhm.
Especially if you're in a space where you feel underappreciated or you feel like you're doing all this work but you're not necessarily seeing the fruit of it. You're just working. Sometimes it's good to take a step back and appreciate and give yourself a pat on the back of, no, I've been killing it. I've been doing a lot of great work. And maybe to no fault of the supervisor or your coworkers, they're just in their own space too. If you don't take the
Absolutely.
time to just say, yo, Emily, I've been doing a great job. Akeem, I've been doing a great job. This,
Hmm.
like you said, it fit the description. I'm qualified for it. Why not nominate myself so I can be recognized for what I've been doing? No,
Yep.
that's dope. That's really, really dope. And last thing I reckon, you also said I liked, rest when it is slow. Rest when it is
Mhm.
slow. I don't start my new job for like another week, and it's slow right now, and it's tough to rest. It's really tough
Mhm.
to rest. It's slow right now. I know it's about to pick up. I know it's about to get crazy, but I've been going all year. It's very hard to have a time where you have nothing on your calendar or not as much on your calendar, and it's a moment of rest. But because I'm in the mindset of like I'm always on the go, when it's actually slow, it's hard to get that rest. So
It's
how do
so
you
hard.
rest when it is slow? How do you rest when it is slow? Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure. Well, 2, 3 years ago, when I was a first associate, it was actually an associate who was only a year or two ahead of me that gave me that advice. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this job will ebb and flow. You'll
Mm-hmm.
have times where you're just banking hours and then it'll
Mm-hmm.
stop. And it's
Yeah.
really easy to be like, I'm never going to work again. I'm not going to see another billable hour. No, it'll
Mm,
come back. It'll ebb
yeah.
and flow.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, I would go work out, go to the grocery store in the middle of the day. Now I feel like I'm in recovery mode, so I've taken a lot of naps in 2024 when it's
Good.
slow.
Good.
Um, or I use that time to get ahead on my content creation
Mm-hmm.
or go for a walk on the lake or spend time with my dogs. But
Yeah.
you will regret not taking advantage of
Mm,
those slow times in 6 months when it's full on all day, every day.
yeah.
So you have to take advantage of those times and try to do it without guilt. And that just brings it back to my billable hour madness,
Mm,
is that by tracking where I stand every day, when I have a pause, I have ammo to tell my brain, you don't need to feel guilty for going to get your nails done or get a
mm,
massage or take a nap.
mm-hmm. You've earned that time. Like you put in the
Hmm.
work to earn this rest, earn this pause. Man,
Yep.
that's dope. See, as you can tell, Emily be dropping gems on the grace period. So go check out her podcast. The grace period
Thank
is really,
you.
really good. And I think it's a great point to end the podcast. And the way we end is with a closing argument. Closing argument. And the way that goes is I give you the word of the day. I give you a word, and I don't tell you the meaning of it. But you have to use it in your closing argument to find a way to incorporate it. And the closing argument is basically one last message of encouragement to the audience. You could summarize what we spoke about today, or you could just give them a nugget of wisdom or encouragement to close us out, however you want to shape it. But that's a closing argument. And the word of the day is ubiquitous. Ubiquitous. and you're an amazing writer. So I know you know how to fit that in.
Ubiquitous.
And yeah,
Okay.
you can start whenever. Yeah.
Okay. I can use this pretty well.
Okay.
So there's a lot of negative things that are ubiquitous in the legal profession. The tradition, the hierarchy, the lack of diversity, especially at the top, and the coping mechanisms we have come to just accept as normal in the legal profession that aren't necessarily the healthiest options. And what I try to do in my little sphere of influence is change what is ubiquitous in the law. I want it to be ubiquitous that we have candid mentors that share openly about it being hard and how they got through it. I want it to be ubiquitous that maybe you don't drink at a happy hour. I want it to be ubiquitous that you can say no sometimes and you don't have to say yes to everything. And that is slow change, but it can change. It's not impossible. And the way we start that is by being vulnerable and leading by example and just focusing on your little sphere of influence, because it doesn't have to be ubiquitous in the entire profession. It can just be ubiquitous on your team between you and your assistant that you're creating a positive, more well culture in your sphere and in your zone of influence.
Hey, amazing. Emily Stedman, Esquire, ladies and gentlemen. She used the word perfectly. Ubiquitous means existing or being everywhere at the same time, constantly encountered. And that's true. There's a lot of ubiquitous things in the profession that doesn't have to be ubiquitous. We could make a new ubiquitous. New things could be ubiquitous
Absolutely.
in the profession.
Yes.
So
I
thank you
have
so
now
much,
used
Emily,
that
for being on the
word.
podcast.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I use
5
that
more
word
times
more
than you've ever
in
used it.
yeah, absolutely. But it was a great
No, it was
exercise. I
perfect.
enjoyed that.
Good.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was amazing. The audience is going to learn so much, especially about the mental well-being in whatever area you are, whether it's big law, private sector, public sector. These are things that you can take with you and to make your career and your profession look different. It doesn't have to be the same as how it has been. So thank you, Emily, for sharing those things. It was very, very helpful.
Thank you for having me.